Ladies, gentlemen, and the Technicolor rainbow in between, welcome to what is going to be something a little different from Haymakers this time. I'm the Luna Corva, this is Nikki V, and today we're Yes?
I said hi.
I thought you said, never mind. And today we are tackling something a bit different. A good friend of ours has provided us with a set of booking challenges, and we're going to run through our solutions to them. The first one, starting us off, is how, when, and by who would we have ended Goldberg's streak? Nikki, do you want to take this, or are you fielding that one to me?
I'll go first with this one. So originally I wanted this to go to somebody who was like on the rise, but the problem with that is that WCW didn't really have those kinds of people, especially not on the heel side. Like at first I wanted it to be Jeff Jarrett, but he didn't show up in the company until late 1999, so that would mean that you'd have to kind of finagle the title around Goldberg for like the better part of a year. Like if you wanted to take the title off him, you'd have to like triple threat that shit, and you could make it work. But then I thought about it, and the simple answer is it should have been Hulk Hogan. Like, you do the original match, have Goldberg beat Hulk Hogan, ideally at a pay-per-view, probably not on free TV. I'm just gonna throw that one out there. But, like, you have Goldberg take the title off of Hulk Hogan. Like, Goldberg holds on to it till Starrcade. Hogan wins World War III instead of Kevin Nash. And then at Starrcade, you have basically the same thing that happened in real life. You have Scott Hall come in, taser the shit out of Goldberg, and then Hulk Hogan can go for the leg drop and win. Like, it fits so much better than what they did in real life, with Kevin Nash just being awkwardly like, I don't want to do this, but I guess I have to. And then, like, a month later, or less, or whatever it was, like, they turned back into the NWO, and it's just like, it felt like a swerve for the sake of a swerve, which, that's on brand for WCW, but, like, it should have just been Hulk Hogan. You can start building Goldberg back up to, like, now he's fighting the entire NWO now, because, like, the NWO is back together. And, like, yeah. It's the obvious answer, but I feel like it's the right one. What do you think?
Well, I'm afraid I might have to respectfully disagree with you there.
That's fair.
In my opinion, it does absolutely need to go to a rising star. See, my problem with the way streaks end is I feel that streaks miss half the point. The purpose behind streaks is twofold. One, it's a benefit for the person holding the streak. It absolutely makes that person. But for point the second, it should always make the person who takes the streak away from them. Okada's 2-year-long title reign made Kenny Omega when he was the one to finally take the belt away from him. As fraudulent as people, say that Andre the Giant's 10-year-long unbeaten streak is, the story of that unbeaten streak and him finally being conquered by Hulk Hogan, that made Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was already big, but that was the moment when Hulk Hogan went from big to enormous.
Besides the steroids.
Yes, besides the steroids. Yes, he went from big to enormous, then deflated in the 90s after the steroid scandal. And it also needs to be clean, in my opinion. It needs to be a clean victory over Goldberg. Because not only did Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan it didn't make either of them because they were already made. Kevin Nash, it could have made, but it didn't make him because by winning via taser, it didn't feel that he had overcome Goldberg. It didn't feel that he had achieved the next level of ascendancy.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, he won almost by technicality, so the rub didn't even transfer to him. It's one of those, as Kevin Nash himself would say, if you're going to do something, go all the way. Don't go half pregnant on something. It's a good quote.
It is a very
Anyway,
good. Kevin Nash is full of those.
I think one of my favorites from Kevin Nash is everyone wants to equate something to something else. It's like, I wiped my ass the other day. Speaking of open heart surgery.
Oh yeah. Anyway, who would be your guy then?
Well, I thoroughly disagree that WCW, I should say, had no rising stars. They had one. He was incredibly popular, had won a few belts in the lower levels, and he actually had a match with Goldberg that is considered one of Goldberg's best matches, and there was one moment in the match where he actually hit his finisher out of nowhere on Goldberg, and people thought, could he win it then and there?
Mm-hmm.
He was loved by the fans. A believable contender, though in my opinion, being believable is a secondary importance. More than someone being believable to win, they should be someone that the audience wants to see win. It's how snake oil salesmen work.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, the product they're selling, logically, you should know this can't be real. You can't just pop some pills and then immediately get a 10-foot dick. It doesn't work that way. But the customer wants it to be true, and he buys into it. So, who am I talking about? Well, dear intelligent listeners, I'm sure that many of you would have guessed already, my candidate is Diamond Dallas Page.
Mm-hmm.
The so-called at the time People's Champion, someone who was beloved by the fans, a very over babyface, but not there just yet. But Diamond Dallas Page is a babyface. Does that mean we need to turn Goldberg heel? Not at all. After all, there's already a story there without needing to turn both of them heel. Goldberg wants to protect his streak, and DDP wants to overcome it. You don't need to turn either of them heel, and may I remind you that some of the best matches in professional wrestling history have been babyface versus babyface. Shall I name one? Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. Considered one of the greatest matches of all time, babyface versus babyface. CM Punk versus John Cena, Money in the Bank, babyface versus babyface. Adrian Neville versus Sami Zayn. Well, Neville was closer to tweener, but ultimately babyface versus babyface. Mm-hmm. While a wrestler can work heel of Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock at WrestleMania 17, babyface versus babyface. While during the match one could choose to work more heel or the other, probably be Goldberg because he'd likely be working the more dominant style. Mm-hmm. Face versus face matches absolutely can work as long as you give fans the reason to cheer for one over the other. And in the case of DDP, I think people would want to see him break the streak. They would want to see him do the impossible. He was already, for many fans, their guy. Let's capitalize on that. Let's give him that major rub. Let's give him the underdog reaching that next level story. Mm-hmm. You transfer all the momentum, the heat from Goldberg to DDP, so the streak doesn't end with a wet fart. It has a great conclusion. It goes somewhere. And in the case of Goldberg, by losing to a worthy challenger, by instead of Goldberg was tasered, he was beat by the better man. No shame in that. Goldberg still gets to feel strong. One guy managed to finally take it away from him, but beating him ain't easy. In fact, that's actually something that NXT did really well with, and this might be a surprise to some people, Baron Corbin. When Baron Corbin lost his streak, he was still presented as someone who was a danger to many people on the roster and who beating mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Beating Baron Corbin never felt easy, and that was an important thing to do.
Right.
As opposed to, say, Asuka, who in the WWE was, oh, your streak's lost now? Yeah, you're losing to Carmella.
Right. That was dumb. But, like, the reason why I didn't want to give it to Diamond Dallas Page in the first place was, like, the streak is this big, like, it's this big draw that people want to see. And, like, if it goes to a face, then, yes, they are made. But if it goes to a heel, specifically, if it goes to a heel who cheated to win, like, that person has fuck you heat. Like, that person is just the biggest dick ever for taking away something beautiful like that. And it has the bonus rub of, if you want to, like, it's like how I did in my Asuka video. Like, if you want to say that win was invalid because somebody had to use a taser to win, then you could still get the rub by being the first person to beat that guy clean. So, like,
I
go ahead.
Sorry,
That was it.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from, but I do have a counterpoint, and I can actually think of one. What's one of your favorite movies?
Die Hard, Shawshank Redemption, Talladega Nights. Where are you going with this?
Okay, let's go with Die Hard, okay? So, John McClane has fought his way all up the building. I can't remember the name of the building, but either way, he's fought his way... Nakatomi Plaza, thank you very much. He's fought his way all up the Nakatomi Plaza. His wife is in sight. He can see he's going to rescue her, and then some thug comes out of nowhere and shoots him in the head with a sniper rifle. Roll credits, the movie ends. Now, in that scenario, would you be angry at the sniper thinking, oh, he's one of the greatest villains of all time. God, I hate that villain. Or would you be pissed off at the writer for taking a story that you invested in and ending it with a complete anticlimax?
Fair.
And that's kind of how I see ending the streak with a cheap method like that is. You see, one of the appeals of the streak is the streak is ultimately a storyline. And while we're enjoying the storyline of the rise, we're also ultimately looking for the climax, the high point, the moment when someone does indeed beat Goldberg. Just as even when you're enjoying Die Hard, you're still looking for the moment where John McClane and Hans Gruber finally have that showdown. Yes, it'll mean the movie will end, but as long as it ends in a satisfying manner, you're going to go home happy. Same with any title run streak or really any story.
I will say that it would be a lot more like if Hans Gruber had done it that way instead of if some rando sniper, because if some, like, the way in that scenario, it would be like if, like, Disco Inferno had done that. Like, but this is Hulk Hogan we're talking about. This is somebody who is, like, both kayfabe-wise booked incredibly strong and backstage has the sway to pull this kind of shit.
That is true, though I will say, as my understanding of it is, at that point, Hulk Hogan, not just as a face, but as a heel, was really starting to lose his luster and wear out his welcome. Mainly due to another storyline that the WC had the attitude of, well, people like it, we want it to continue, and that was the NWO, which, as I've said in the past, the NWO's problem was it went on too long. It had a natural conclusion at Starrcade 1997, but instead of the hero defeats the villain there, the story is ended, and now we can move on to a new chapter. It just kept going and going and going and going. And at that point, Hogan I don't think Hogan really felt like a huge, the ultimate villain. He felt like... I'm trying to think of actually a good comparison to something else in fiction. Okay, he felt like Frieza on Namek. Are we still here?
Gotcha.
Actually, better example. He felt like as Team 4-Star put it, Majin Buu. Are we still doing this? And again, you combine that with the anticlimax of the ending, and in my opinion, and I think this is part of the reason fans reacted so negatively they did, even in the scenario itself, the heat wasn't really on NWO for the taser trick. The heat was on WCW. For ending a story fans were invested in such a disappointing manner. And I think that's something to always be careful of. Are you angry with the character? Is your audience angry with your characters, or are they pissed off at you, the writer?
Right. Yeah.
That's my final thoughts on Goldberg. How are we doing on time?
We are 17 minutes in.
Okay. Then I think we've got time for the next booking thing, which is actually streak related as well. So we are really being very thematic here today. The next thing is the Undertaker Streak. How, who, when, where, and you have to end it.
Right.
No, Undertaker and Triple H ride off into the sunset after their Hell in a Cell match, and the streak, and Undertaker retires with a streak never ended. No. We have to end the streak. So, Nikki, do you want to start this one again?
Actually, you can start this one. Like, I did the last one. So.
Okay, then. Well, I'm actually going in the complete opposite direction, because for this one, I do, in fact, feel it needs to be a heel. So, I'm not actually going to pick any of the people that Undertaker actually... Well, okay, this person did fight the Undertaker at WrestleMania, but I'm going to have this match take place at a different WrestleMania than when it actually happened. So, first, here are some of my criteria I'm looking at for defeating Undertaker Streak. One, it needs to be a heel. This is simply because the Undertaker Streak was so... Now, Goldberg's streak was loved, but I do think you could still... Like, there were people who were actually cheering for Kevin Nash when he pinned Goldberg just for the holy wow of, oh, could someone beat Goldberg?
Yeah,
but by this point,
Kevin Nash was over in WCW. Never forget that.
Yeah, but after years and years and years and years of the Undertaker Streak had become beloved, iconic. Ending the streak was like ending Christmas. You have to make it heel because there was no possible way the winner wouldn't get heat on them. Second, you need to again make it a rising star, because you want to transfer it. You want to use a streak like this to make someone, to transfer all that momentum to a new face rather than the same old guard. It's like, because it's like that's the reason Shawn Michaels and Triple H never won, because like Shawn Michaels and Triple H beat the Undertaker's streak, and what? They're not going to be going on some long title run. That's past them now. Or John Cena beats Undertaker's streak, and what? John Cena's already like the guy. He's the franchise player. There's a certain point where you go from the guy to the super awesome, chocolatey, super fudge coated mega super guy, and it just becomes unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to be a rising star, but not so low in the card that it feels that they feel unworthy.
Mm-hmm.
So upper mid card area, they are definitely on the rise. They're at a high point, but they need something to go from an A plus to an S tier. And they need to be someone who is so upper mid card heel, rising star, and this needs to happen at WrestleMania 27, because 27 was that sweet spot of Undertaker is starting to slow down, but he's still got enough, but he's still able to go. Around about 28 to 29, that was when Undertaker, while he was able to have good matches, he was also really starting to slow down and show his age. Hell, at 27, he was starting to do that. So 27's our real sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
Not too early, because it has to happen after the Shawn Michaels Undertaker duo of matches. We cannot interfere with that. I refuse.
Sure.
Those matches need to happen.
Absolutely.
But 28 to 29, that's when you start to risk that it might be an anticlimax. 27 is your sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
So 27, 2000, WrestleMania 27, 2011, you're looking for an upper mid card heel, rising star, and I can think of one name that perfectly fits that description.
Mm-hmm.
Can you?
I think I can. Is it Wade
CM
Barrett?
Punk.
Oh, wow.
CM Punk, I think, is just the guy to take the win from The Undertaker.
Mm-hmm.
That would catapult him to the next level. And what happens later on that year? Oh, just the Money in the Bank feud with John Cena. Imagine if CM Punk is going into that feud having just beat The Undertaker. In fact, you could play that into the storyline of CM Punk's frustration. Granted, these would become kayfabe frustrations more than real life, but I think CM Punk is good enough of a performer that he can still carry those kayfabe frustrations and make them feel genuinely real.
Mm-hmm.
CM Punk beats The Undertaker. Okay, where's my title shot? Actually, we're not giving you a title shot. In fact, we're not giving you a match. You see, you beating The Undertaker has gotten so much heat on you, and so much heat on you, and so much heat on us. We're basically going to bury you under the rug and pretend you don't exist, just so until this whole thing blows over. We're not even going to acknowledge your win. We're going to pretend it never happened. You know, in fact, if you could sign this thing saying that you renounce your victory over The Undertaker. No! Bullshit! I beat The Undertaker. I should be in the main fucking event. You shouldn't be pretending that I don't bloody exist. So imagine you take that, and it also plays into, Vince McMahon's fear that John Cena might lose. Cena, this guy already ruined one of my biggest attractions at WrestleMania. I'm not having him take the WB title from me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just, to me, that story gives so much heat, so much onto CM Punk initially, and then take that and transfer it into so much momentum and intrigue for the CM Punk versus John Cena match at WrestleMania. To me, CM Punk is your perfect person to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania 27. Nikki, I like to hear your side of things.
CM Punk is a pretty good one. He was one of the people I was thinking of specifically at 29 because, like, the Michaels matches were excellent, but so were the Triple H ones. I can't even say that they weren't. But, like, yeah, CM Punk at 27 or at 29, that would have worked. I think it should have been Bray Wyatt. Like, Bray Wyatt at 30... Actually, not at 31. At 30. Like, you can actually switch around like, a couple of those matches on the card, because in real life, it was, uh, what's like, in real life, it was John Cena versus Bray Wyatt, and Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar.
Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, so you swap those two. You have Brock Lesnar fight John Cena, and have the munching happen there. So that's something you can talk about for down the road, and like he can eventually take the title off of, or he can eventually win the title when Bryan has to vacate the title with an injury, and then Bray Wyatt versus the Undertaker, like the passing of the torch from the spoopy guy of the Attitude Era to the spoopy guy of the current era. Like it just. It feels like the role that was meant for the person who is going to take the torch from Undertaker. Like,
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I agree. Thematically, that is an excellent idea. But I can see a pitfall, and I'm curious how you might get around this.
Mm-hmm.
The match itself. Now, I'm going to say something that is controversial but true. Bray Wyatt is a good worker. He's not a fantastic worker, but he is absolutely solid when he's allowed to wrestle. When he's allowed to just have a wrestling match, or rather, when he's allowed to put forth his own ideas, he actually is fine. His matches always fall apart when he is terribly booked or road agented. Like the Dean Ambrose match at TLC. It was going fine until the booked finish of exploding light phone thing.
Yeah, when Hatsune Miku popped up and like cost him the match.
Exactly. The John Cena steel cage match. The problems there were things booked around Bray Wyatt. It had nothing to do with Bray Wyatt's own performance in the match.
Right.
The problems the Fiend matches were all to do with the booking. Hey, Bray Wyatt, I want you to no-sell everything to a ludicrous degree. Hey, we're gonna flood the arena red so you don't see it. Hey, we're going to have you lying there doing nothing for whole things. But then when he had a match against Daniel Bryan, which was him actually just wrestling Daniel Bryan, even though it was still held back because, you know, they'd gone with the whole Fiend kicks out of everything and they had to stick to it, it was still a good match because the Fiend was able to actually just wrestle. And my biggest case of Bray Wyatt is a decent wrestler. Bray Wyatt versus Roman Reigns, Hell in a Cell. Two guys who are not known for being great workers, and rather they are underestimated as a worker. You can't... Daniel Bryan... Okay, you could say Daniel Bryan carried Bray Wyatt. I don't think you could say that Roman Reigns carried Bray Wyatt. Or you could say... And I don't think you could say that Bray Wyatt carried Roman Reigns. And yet, they had a genuinely good match. Like 3 to 3.5, if not 4-star match. That tells me they're both actually good at their job. They know what they're doing when they're allowed to do it under their own terms.
Right.
So, Bray Wyatt can put on a good match. The Undertaker, with all due respect, at that period in his life, there was a reason... Part of the reason I think people didn't like how the streak ended is because WrestleMania 23, a fantastic match. 24, a fantastic match. 25, one of the greatest matches of all time. 26, arguably just as good, if not better. 27 and 28, also fantastic. 29, wonderful. 30...
Yeah, but part of that was because, like, early on, he sustained a whopper of a concussion because he was fighting Brock Lesnar.
But there's no guarantee. But part of that is Brock Lesnar, but I think a large part of it was Undertaker's age at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big chance if it happens that thematically the match is a great idea, but if it happens at 30 when the Undertaker is in his 50s, there's a big chance that the match is going to end up being a letdown. So how would you try to get around that?
Well, first I would just like to say he was just before his 50s, so not quite as good, but like, just for clarity. But like, their match at 31 wasn't bad. Like, if in fact, I would say the match at 31 was good, and people would have liked it better if it hadn't just been used to like rebuild the Undertaker after his loss to Brock. If he's going into that match still with the streak intact, going up against this new supernatural being, like, I think that they would book it in a way that doesn't make, like, they would go out of their way to make sure that Bray Wyatt comes out of this match like as the new top supernatural guy in the company. Like, they're not gonna fuck this up. Like, I know that that's asking a lot out of WWE, but like, this is the ending of the, like, they handled the ending of the streak as well as they could have with the person that they did choose. So I think that if they go with somebody who has a little bit more going on than Brock Lesnar, like, I just feel like the match will be a lot more palatable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where you're coming from. Though, one last question I have.
Mm-hmm.
Will good be good enough? Because this will be coming off of a streak of fantastic to legendary performances. Is it possible that anything that is less than a 4.5 star match would be seen as a letdown?
I will counter with this. The actual match was a letdown. Like, so it'll be better than the actual match.
True. I mean, you are not wrong in there. I'm just worried that you'd still get a negative reaction if it was anything less than a fantastic match.
It didn't hurt Brock.
I mean, it didn't hurt Brock, but it did hurt how people felt about the ending of the streak. So
yeah.
But I do see it. But I do see a point.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, you could, if the match is more one-sided or something, you could take that and turn it into, like, if you can't have a great back and forth match, you could have a great story with the match as it is. So
mm-hmm.
I can definitely see merits in your argument. I can definitely see how the way you booked it would work.
Yeah. All right, we are about 34 minutes in now, so let's get one more in there. Why not?
Okay. Well, Nikki, now it's your turn to take this one.
All right, so
this one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yep, you go it. Sorry.
Okay, so this one is, what if there was a third Brother of Destruction? We're staying on the Undertaker thing, so Kane and the Undertaker have some wild backstory, and it would, if they were to add another character to that story in the WWE canon, that could give somebody one hell of a rub. So who should it be? I think, now, going off the actual canon of what happened, you have the Undertaker burning down their family home. Both their parents died. Undertaker also died and came back to life as a voodoo priest man. Wrestling is weird. And the only survivor of it went insane and became a demon. So imagine if there was another person who survived that, who saw their whole family either die or go insane. Like, that would fuck you up. That would mess with your outlook on life, to put it lightly. Like, I feel like it would make you feel as though, it would make you turn kind of nihilistic. Like, everything can be snatched from you in an instant, and like nothing really matters. I think you can see where I am going with this one. It's Raven.
Yes, I can definitely see that.
Mm-hmm. Like, have Raven come in, like, and don't give him powers like them. Like, have him be the human side of the Undertaker and Kane. Like, they're these mystical, magical, fire-breathing, lightning-throwing, like, pseudo-gods. And then there's Raven off to the side, like, lamenting everything he's lost and just fighting back against the machine. Like, there's a story in there. And, like, it would, like, Raven's tone, I feel like, would match the air that they give off, just in a more human way. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. I agree on that.
Mm-hmm. Now, as for what stories they could do with that I don't actually know. Like, I do feel like Raven would not be booked as strong as The Undertaker and Kane for fairly simple reasons. Like, he's still human and they are not. So, but it would at least elevate, by association at least, Raven up to a higher level than he was at in WWE, which was basically just like lower card, like weird cult guy. But what do you think? Where would you go with it?
Okay, so one thing about The Undertaker and Kane is, if you're going for a story like this, one needs to pin down the mythology of Kane and The Undertaker, because there's been so many retcons, different retellings, different versions, etc., that different people can have very different interpretations of who and what the character and their history is supposed to be. I mean, for one thing, is he supposed to be a zombie, or is he supposed to be some dark sorcerer? Is Kane a mental patient or a demon? Etc., etc., etc. So, my interpretation of The Undertaker and Kane's backstory is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
With the retcons and such going back and forth of who burned down the family home, the way I see it is, first of all, we know The Undertaker was at one point in his life human. Mm-hmm. But we also know at some point he became something else, something more. One line from The Undertaker: "The devil still answers with Sir." Undertaker is many things, but a liar is not one of them. Mm-hmm. Nor has he ever been one for empty boasts. And with the power he wields, I think one can take that line at face value. Mm-hmm. He was human at one point, but he became something even the devil himself is afraid of. So, putting things together, it seems to me that from a very young age, The Undertaker... Actually, I'm going to pause myself there, and I'm going to make a statement that would sound ridiculous, but I will then promise that I am going to back it up.
Okay.
The story of The Undertaker is a darker version of the themes of Peter Parker. I told you. It sounds ridiculous.
Go for it, dude.
But I also told you that I'm going to back it up.
I really hope this stays in.
It should.
Yeah.
The Undertaker, I believe, is pretty clear that from a very young age, he was interested in the occult, in the supernatural, in death, in all those things. And he studied these powers, and he learned from them. And his little brother, as all little brothers do, became interested in that as well. And whether it was Kane by himself or Kane with the Undertaker's help, Kane tried to contact the outer world itself. He either intentionally or accidentally summoned a demon. That demon possessed Kane, fused with his soul to the point where today it's impossible to tell where Kane begins and the demon ends. And in the process, burned down the Undertaker's home. This was the first element of the theme. Undertaker sought power, and the consequence was the loss. And the consequence was the loss of his entire family, including, he believed, his brother. Then, later on in his life, it seems that Undertaker was turned into a zombie of pallbearers. Maybe he was drugged, maybe he was cursed, but for whatever reason, he took on a more subservient role. Again, where his power was the very thing binding him. He was almost a slave to his power. And then, when he tried to break free of it, to me, I interpret the Ministry saga as the Undertaker seeking to escape from his imprisonment, his fears and regrets, by convincing himself that he regrets nothing. Instead of him feeling regret for what happened to Kane, he convinced himself that he was proud of it. Haha, I built it, I burnt down the home, I killed them all, I don't care about anything. And I believe the reason that he became Biker Taker shortly afterwards was because after the Ministry thing, he looked at himself in the mirror and said, what have I become? I've become a servant to Vince McMahon, one of the pettiest, most pathetic people on the planet. I'm referring, of course, to the character of Mr. McMahon. Vince McMahon, I think, is an abusive cunt, but he's not pathetic, I will say that. The character absolutely was. The character was a coward. The character was a joke. Vince McMahon was not afraid to have that character show his ass, as he would say himself. But imagine the Undertaker realizing, I've become subservient to that kind of man. The shame he would feel. That's why I think he rejected, threw away all the dark, supernatural stuff about him. He wanted to start over, start fresh, be human, be mortal. But even then, he couldn't escape it. Kane dragged him back. But Kane himself is also a character that constantly keeps trying to escape from his fate. This life of dark power that he's been pulled into, but it keeps dragging him back. He tries to have friends, but the demon always comes out. Family, girlfriends, the demon keeps coming out. He wants to start a new life as a man of business, but the demon keeps coming out. He's always, the both of them are always drawn back. And I think at some point the Undertaker sought, I believe that the Undertaker sought the power of death for his own personal curiosity or gratification. But it cost him so much that he realized that he couldn't treat this power as just some frivolous tool. No, he became the Lord of the Undead, even when he did not have a pallbearer or a brother love controlling him. he became bound to his responsibility. There is a fantastic analysis that Josh Scorcher actually did of The Undertaker, where he noticed that in some of his matches, The Undertaker looks like he's not enjoying what he's doing. And yet there are moments when he clearly does. So why is he doing something that he doesn't enjoy if there are times when it's clear he could stop, unless he can't? Unless The Undertaker is answering to someone, or I feel more likely something else. And I believe the story of The Undertaker is someone who sought the power of death and realized, and after it cost him everything, he realized that the only way to atone, I should say, the only way to really make up for everything it had cost him and give him some sense of purpose and to make it feel like this wasn't all for nothing is to accept the responsibility that power came with. The responsibility of being the Lord of Death. That is why I say The Undertaker and Kane's story is a darker version of the story of Peter Parker, because they are both stories of power, responsibility, consequence, and in a way, fate.
Okay.
So, that diatribe aside, how does a third brother fit into all of this?
We went way the fuck off track there.
Yes, but I hope you enjoyed, and it does lead me into something.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the brother should be an architect of that fate and responsibility, because now, once again, Kane is becoming more human. The Undertaker is going back to the Biker Taker. They're winding down in their careers. Maybe they feel that they can take a rest, that they can leave all this dark supernatural stuff behind. The third brother is going to be the one who pulls them back into it. So, what kind of character should this be? Like you, I agree that I'm not sure it should be Raven himself. But the idea of it being a manipulative character, a dark character, less a physical threat and more of a mental one, I absolutely agree with that. That's a great angle to go. Mm-hmm. In fact, given the age that the brother would have to be at this point, in his 40s to 50s, it's probably the only real way to go. I don't see this brother as being someone to fight the Undertaker and Kane head on, but instead someone to play mind games with them, to twist other people around his finger and organize them. And I think it would actually be a good idea to take this in the Dario Cueto route. If you don't need it to be someone to directly fight them, but instead take a mastermind manager role, hire an actor to play this character. After all, what you need in this scenario is not fighting ability, but performance ability, charisma, mic skills, someone to really carry the character. So what's this character's origins? Well, and why has he never been mentioned before? Well, I'm thinking this was an older brother, and one, as far as they knew, died when they were very young. Mm-hmm. My story here is this brother was a cult member, and who died as part of a ritual suicide. Perhaps the morbidity of this is what inspired the Undertaker to become so. Plus, along with his father's profession, made him become so fascinated in the workings of death, both on a physical embalmment level, but also on a more esoteric supernatural level. In a way, if we went with this brother was the start of all of it. Mm-hmm. His death was the catalyst for the Undertaker seeking to learn more about the other side. And that led to Kane trying to follow in his brother's footsteps and everything. And maybe the brother... And we could keep this ambiguous. Did the brother simply fake his death? Or did he really die and is his spirit coming back? But either way, this brother is an agent of fate. This brother sees that the Undertaker and Kane have been shirking their responsibilities, shirking their role as representatives of death and hell each. And he is going to punish them for their transgressions and pull them back into that life. Perhaps, for instance, he locks Michelle McCool in the Undertaker's home and burns that down, just as the Undertaker burnt down his family home by accident or intent, we don't know, all those years ago. You tried to escape your fate will come back to you. Again, if Kane were the agent of the Undertaker's consequences of his misdeeds coming back to haunt him, the third brother is a reminder of both of them to remember their place and their role.
That would work. That would be dark as shit, but that would work.
And that is how I would book the genuinely challenging concept of the Undertaker and Kane's third brother. Because you need something that would fit. You need something that would fit into the story, fit into the theme, and not make it feel like this person is just Kane 2.0 or The Undertaker 2.0 or copying or repeating some old story. They need to feel like a natural inclusion, and that's why we've both taken the road of we need to do something different that ties into their backstories.
Alright, well, that I think is a good stopping point for us. We've been going for a little over 50 minutes now, so yeah, I think this went alright. So if you want to see us do some more of these, let us know. And with that out of the way, thank you guys very much, and we will see y'all later.